let me talk to you first that this subject is very accounting. All right. So I try to make it easy because in terms of the technical, accounting is very difficult for the accountant. All right. And most of the things that we are going to talk about is about the financial instruments, of which being understood very well by the financial analyst, but you don't have the background in accounting. So during the presentation, if you have any question, just raise your hand. Don't worry that you would like me to recap in any topic or would like me to go back and explain back 5 or 7 pages before. That's fine because I think the standard, again, is very difficult, all right? So the agenda that I'm going to walk through is about the overall of the impact of these standards. So you know which item on the financial position or on the balance sheet that I'm talking about, all right? And I'm going to let you know like the classification and also the impact after being adopted by the FSA 9, so you can reconcile the difference. And the measurements in terms of effective interest rate, which is quite similar to the concept of IRR under financial concept, but there are certain things that you need to reconsider, for example, like the fee and cost. When you issue the debt to the public, you might have like investment banking fee that you need to pay to the financial people or other costs like the legal fee, the publication fee. Certain fees can be capitalized as part of the loan or liabilities that you're going to book to the account. But some expense, for example, like with the advertising, it may not be capitalized as part of the liabilities. So it's going to have an impact to the P&L. And it's going to be different from what we have been doing so far. Next would be the high-level concept of the hedge accounting. This one is very new to Thai accounting standard. Most of the companies in Thailand, the listed companies, when they have like the derivatives, we haven't booked the fair value to the financial statements yet. We just do the disclosures, and in practice, the companies, they all record it differently. Some just only disclose, some book the accrue in terms of the interest, some gonna book the fair value, but a few companies, just only like the big one which issued bonds overseas, they're gonna mark to the market, all right? The disclosure, you will know the difficulties, why financial institutions in Thailand try to push this standard further, not being implemented in the year 2019. I will give you the example of the disclosure and also what is going to be different in terms of comparison of the current Thai accounting standard and IFRS. Last one is the implementation challenge. So you will know like what's impact or what's the challenge being used or being like scored by most of the banks in Thailand. All right. Actually, I just would like to explain you the overall or the overview of this IFRS 9. All right, it will take like 15 or 20 minutes to walk through this all impact. If you can get or understand what I'm trying to explain you in 20 minutes, you can go out. All right, because I mean this one is just only the brief and also the overview. All right. The first one is about the classification and measurement. Actually, there are certain, let me explain like in terms of financial asset and financial liabilities first, all right? In terms of financial asset, it's gonna be totally different from what we have been doing under Thai accounting standards, all right? But in terms of the measurement, I think it's not new to us at all. We know about the fair value, we know about the amortized cost. All right, so in terms of the financial asset, just difference in terms of how we are going to classify the financial asset. I'm going to walk you through later on like what are the difference and what are the concepts that the people or the financial people like you in the future needs to help and make decision on how to classify the financial asset. All right. Second thing is about the derivatives. As I previously told you, if you look through the current financial standards, derivatives, might be just only the off balance sheet, all right? Some companies, if they like invest or buy forward contract from the bank, what are they going to do? They're gonna book the account by comparing the forward rate against spot rate, all right? For example, like the spot rate is 40, forward rate is 45, so the different 5, they will do amortization. Meaning that if it is like 3 months, this 5 is going to be divided by 3 and record as either asset or liabilities on the balance sheet and P&L by using the amortization concept. So it's totally different from what other countries book on the financial derivatives, all right? So later on, if we apply the IFRS 9, I think this one is gonna be one of the big impact for the companies in Thailand, because if we look through the listed companies, lots of them having the derivatives. For example, like TUF, they also do lots of derivatives, or like PTT, PTTEP, big companies they have, or even the financial institution. Most of the local banks we have 2 books. One is the trading books, other one is the banking book. For the trading book, right now they do back to the market. For the banking book, which they use this book for hedge accounting under like the economic hedge derivatives, all are be accrued, all right? So by applying this IFRS 9, they need to consider what is the next step they need to do. Some intend to do the hedge accounting, but to do the hedge accounting, there needs a lot of things to be done. For example, like documentation, policy, controls, procedures, and the most important thing is about how they record or how they measure the effectiveness of the hedge transaction. This one is very challenging to most of the banks because they don't just have only 1 or 2 hedge relationships. They might have like 100, 200, or even thousands. And some of the banks try to ask me whether is there any software vendor that can support them doing the hedge accounting. I tell you that there are lots of vendors that try to marketing that okay, we can do the hedge accounting, but in reality it's not in line with the accounting concept. So there needs to be fight with the auditor. What else that is going to be impacted? The investment in equity, which is not like subsidiary of the company, which is not like the associate or joint venture of the companies. Under current Thai accounting standard, certain kind of investment, for example, like investment in non-listed companies, Thai accounting standard allow you to book at cost minus impact. But under new accounting standard, whatsoever investment in equity, you need to fair value. So if you're gonna be the treasury of companies, or if you're gonna be financial analyst of the company, the accounting people might ask you to help them to fair value. You need to think about like the concept of the fair value, the PE, price earning, or like PB, or whatsoever, but you need to give them certain numbers in order to book into the account. In addition to that, under Thai accounting standard, again, current one, if you investment in equity, you can book it as fair value to P&L or fair value to OCI. Fair value to P&L is kind of like trading portfolio. If you buy and sell, very often, like within 3 months or within a year, you can say that, okay, this one is a trading portfolio. You would like to present this amount or this investment in equity at the end of the period at fair value, all right? So gain or loss, unrealized gain or loss on investment in equities will go to P&L under Thai current accounting standard. Other kind of investment, you might say, okay, I don't want to trade it that often, but just would like to invest in these listed companies, and I don't want the P&L to be volatile. So I can book it as, in Thailand we call it available for sales. So change in fair value will book to other comprehensive income, which is below the net income line, no impact to the earning per share. But when you sell or dispose it out, the realized gain and loss will go to P&L. All right, good thing is that investment in equity, which is classified as available for sales based on current accounting standards, you will be happy because if you realize gain or if you sell it out, you are enjoying because the P&L would be, record the realized gain. But during the period, if you don't buy or sell and you present the balance sheet to the investor, unrealized gain or loss from investment in equity will go the line below net profit. So your profit and loss will not be volatile from unrealized gain loss under current accounting standard. All right. If you apply IFRS 9, everything gonna be changed. By default, all investment in equities needs to fair value through P&L. All right. By default, all investment in equities needs to fair value through P&L, meaning that the P&L of the company will be volatile, right? But some might request or some might use the option because the standard has one option saying that, okay, if you don't want your P&L to be volatile, you can book as fair value, as available for sale, which is like change in fair value between period, go to OCI. All right. But the difference between current accounting standard and IFRS is that the realized gain loss from investment in equity, which is classified as fair value to OCI, cannot realize to P&L anymore. So when you sell it out, it's gonna book and realize to retained earnings. So there is a pro and con of using the option under IFRS 9. In just only investment in equity, all right? When we recap, under IFRS 9, by default, all investment in equity should be classified as fair value to P&L, meaning that unrealized gain loss, or when you invest in equity and you don't sell it out during the period, difference in fair value will go to P&L. And when you realize it, meaning that you sell it out, realized gain loss will again go to P&L. Good things, everything gonna present in the P&L. Bad things, P&L gonna be volatile. So most of the financial institutions are very worried on this portfolio. All right. But there is the IFRS 9 provide the option. If you don't want to classify it as fair value through P&L, you can classify it as fair value to OCI, meaning that change in fair value between two periods will go to the line after net income, which we call like after comprehensive income, meaning that earning per share will not be volatile by changing fair value. But the bad thing is that when you sell it out, it will not be realized to net income. It will go directly to retained earnings. So the impact is that, for example, if you have the trader in the company, they make profit for you, but you decide to classify that investment as fair value to OCI. All right? They make profit for you. So in terms of the management, you need to give them the bonus, right? The bonus go to where? P&L. So it impacts your earning per share, right? The bonus that you give to the trader who invests in the investment in equities portfolio go to P&L. But you classify the investment as fair value to OCI. When you dispose it out, they make the gain, but gain to go to retained earnings. So it hasn't been matched between the P&L, the performance of the trader against the performance of the companies. That's why this one is the key topic that has been discussed among the financial institutions. In addition to that, if you look through the BOT requirement or BOT regulation, they have the rules on how they can be able to distribute the dividend to the shareholders. Under Thai law, the financial institution cannot distribute the dividend out of retained earnings. They can be distribute the dividend from net profit only. All right. So if they invest in fair value through OCI for the equity investment and they make a gain, they cannot distribute it out as a dividend to the investor or to the shareholders. So this one has been discussed among the financial institutions and also the Bank of Thailand. That's how we are going to resolve these issues. Next is about the amortized cost. And also it's gonna drive from the structured notes as well. You are like financial major, financing major. So you know there are lots of structured products in the market, right? Inverse floater. What else? Bonds that link to set index. Bonds that is linked to inflation. Bond that the payment might increase or decrease depends on the interest rate, like of other companies like the credit link note. That's kind of the investment or that's kind of the notes that are buying and selling in the market. Currently, Thai accounting standard has not specific on how we need to book this account on the balance sheet. So if you look through, for example, like the insurance company financial statements, they invest in the structured notes by now, and they book the account just like the held to maturity, meaning that doing the amortize of the investment. They haven't even disclosed or booked the embedded derivatives in the complex notes in the account. So there is no volatilities in terms of the P&L at all. Just do the amortization. Under new accounting standards, this complex or this structure notes, they need to fair value. Fair value for the whole package of that investment. All right, so the P&L again, volatile. By changing in the fair value of this investment. So this one is very difficult for the insurance companies to manage the P&L. If you ask this question, what is the impact of the IFRS 9 to the insurance companies? One of the answers that they are worried is about the fair value of the structured notes. Because if you think about like the life insurance company, how long of the life insurance contract? We have two kinds, like life and non-life. Non-life is kind of like car accident, fire. That's gonna be the short term, a year. But for the life insurance companies, they are long term, like 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. So the liabilities is long term. That's why they try to invest in the structured note, which is long term as well, to match the risk between the liabilities and the asset, like to make the profit. If they just, issue the complex life insurance liabilities and invest in the long term asset, kind of like government bond, the plain money law, what's gonna impact to the insurance profit and loss? Very thin margin, right? Because they need to have agent, they need to have like the reserve under OIC requirements. Lots of cost burden. If they just invest in plain vanilla, no profit at all for the companies. So most of like the top life insurance company, they're gonna invest in the structured notes. After there is a sign of implementing the FSA 9, the volume of requests to invest in the structured notes reduced significantly. So it's gonna impact in terms of the liabilities of the bank, because the insurance company is going to invest in the structured note, which is sold by the financial institution. So reduce in terms of the volume. All right. Next, significant impact to the financial asset is about the impairment. The concept is totally different from current accounting practice. For example, if you are talking about financial institution impairment or the provision on loan, they are going to book by using the BOT's requirement, 1%, 2%, or 100%. There are three choices. So it's very stable, depends on the quality of the asset, or depends on the aging in terms of like default of payments of the companies or of the clients. So it's really, easy to be recorded, and you can like estimate the provision by using the NPL ratio of the bank. But under new accounting standard, which is the IFRS 9, this one is more complex. Then it's the model, then it's the concept of PD, LGD, EAD, amortized cost, forward looking, very, very complex. So the issue is that based on current news, the state enterprise financial institution, they just publish the news saying that they don't want to implement the IFRS 9 because the provision might increase by double. All right. For other things that we might set any provision before, like financial guarantee. For example, if Ajahn Panyarak would like to borrow the money from financial institution, all right, to reduce her credit risk or reduce her interest rate, she might ask, okay, sincerely, can you just help her? She might ask me to guarantee her default. So if Kun Panyarak default, I need to pay back the loan on behalf of Kun Panyarak. So this kind of contract is called financial guarantee. It's very common in Thai practice, or even like in Thai big companies, which maybe like the parent company is listed in the stock exchange, and the subsidiary would like to borrow the money from the financial institution. It's very common that parent company is going to do the financial guarantee to support the credit default of the subsidiaries. The issue is that first thing, sometimes we even as an investor don't know the information about the financial guarantees because the company have rarely disclosed this in the notes to financial statements. Because they ignore, it might say like, okay, it's very low risk, so they don't disclose. So it's gonna have like certain impact to the companies. Because these financial guarantees needs to calculate the provision. For listed companies, they need to think about how to measure the provision under new accounting standard. For the financial institution, there are lots of financial guarantees on balance sheet that haven't booked any provision on it. So again, increase the expense to the financial institution. This is very new to Thai market. But this financial guarantee is required to set the provision under IAS 39. So if you look through and compare this concept against IFRS or the current bank financial institution, it might not significantly different, but for Thai, it is. Next is the undrawn commitment. Again, IFRS 9 require you to set up the provision. You might think, okay, what is the undrawn commitment? Has any of you had the credit card? Me, my credit card? Do you have? Yeah? You have the limit, right? How much is the limit? You don't have to tell me. All right? But I just got like, last time I got like one bank give me the credit for credit card 3 million baht. I need to call, I don't want to use it. Please close or reduce my credit limit. It's very strange for foreigner, and it's very ridiculous for me. I can buy a car by using the credit card. It's true, it's real. The thing is, we haven't thought about anything because it's free. If you have the credit, the bank would like you to use the credit card because the bank is gonna earn the fee. And they haven't thought about the credit risk before. Under FSA 9, provision needs to be set up. So it's, even though I got the card, I don't use the credit card. There is no benefit from providing me the limit, right? New accounting standard, they need to set up the provision. So there is a cost, the like hidden cost occur in terms of the P&L. What impact? What is the impact? The banks again need to reconsider what is the strategy. All right. This one I'm talking about the retail. Next, I'm gonna talk about the wholesale, like the big companies in Thailand. If you look through, there is a lot of competitiveness between the financial institutions. They would like to have the big name as their customers. So what they do is just give the companies the limit. Tell them the lowest interest rate that they can do for that company. In the past, they don't care. Just borrow from me. I'm happy. In the future, they need to reconsider. Because giving the limit to the companies without thinking gonna create again provision under IFRS 9. All right. So financial institution needs to reduce the credit limit to the customers that they are not happy with. All right. That's the view of financial institutions. So in terms of the companies or SME, what's gonna impact? You're gonna request the credit limit from the financial institution harder and harder. All right, because requesting the limit without using gonna create the cost for the bank. All of the things are only the financial asset. Next is about the financial liabilities. The impact of the IFRS 9 would be through the liabilities that they borrow from either financial institution or from the public. Under current Thai accounting standard, there's no mention about how we are going to do with, for example, the upfront fee or the fee that we need to pay to the IB, fee that we need to pay to the auditor to do the pro forma financial statements. There is no mention under Thai accounting standards. So if you look through the financial statements of the companies, they are done differently. Some recorded as expense immediately after they can receive the loan from financial institution. Some might say that, okay, the impact from the upfront fee, impact from the fee being paid to the IB or to the lawyer are very huge. So they might cap it as asset, and do the amortization. This is what they have been doing so far. Under new accounting standards, again, all cash being paid or received from liabilities need to be set or net with the liabilities. So there is no asset being booked anymore. Everything we will net against the liabilities. Interest, instead of booking as a contract, we need to do the new concept, which is called effective interest rate. The effective interest rate is the same as IRR. So we need to calculate the IRR and amortize or record expense as the IRR. Structure notes. As an issuer of the complex derivatives, needs to bifurcate. More difficult in terms of the concept and practicalities of the issuers of the structure notes. New concept of the fair value, you can do the fair value of the liabilities under new accounting standard. But again, needs to calculate, be able to calculate own credit risks to book into the OCI. I will explain this in detail later on. So most of the things, if you're talking about just only classification and measurement, more volatile to profit and loss, most of the asset tends to be more fair value, more complexities in terms of how we set up the provision of the asset. Liabilities, if the company doesn't have any fancy financial liabilities, there's no significant impact to the company. More complex on the financial asset side. Impairment, the concept in terms of calculation of the impairment would be changed. We need to think about the future, the forward-looking events. What is going to, let me put it this way, how accounts receivables on my balance sheet gonna happen if the inflation increase or decrease. How's AR or account receivable on my balance sheet gonna increase or decrease if the interest or inflation increase or decrease? We need to do the analysis and try to reflect the future or the forecast events to the provision. We need to be able to track the status or the provision or the credit risk of the companies throughout the life of the loan. All right. Hedge accounting, no more accrual on the derivatives. So we need to work on the hedge documentation. We need to work on how we are going to calculate the fair value, how we are going to book the hedge item. More difficulty needs to invest in terms of the policy documentations. Disclosure, we're gonna present or like put it more explanation in terms of how we manage the risks, both financial risks, credit risks. All right. Now we are on like February 2018. High accounting standard we're gonna effective on the 2019, so we need to be prepared. I have been asked by head office of certain companies, can the company being disclose the impact of the IFRS 9 on 31st December 2018, the impact of the IFRS 9. I haven't seen any companies or even financial in Thailand be able to quantify the impact of applying IFRS 9. They are currently trying to work it out, try to quantify the impact and try to make it happen. So it means that we need to wait and see the impact to the financial statements. All right. So I have plotted the financial assets on the balance sheet of the companies. What's gonna impact? For example, like this one is for non-financial institution. If they have investment in debt securities, by applying the financial IFRS 9, I think most of the impact would be in the area of expected credit loss. For example, if the company invests in the government bond or state enterprise bond, and they classify it as either like fair value through OCI or they intended to hold it to maturities. Current Thai accounting standard, we haven't thought about the provision. Who's gonna set the provision for investment in government bond? Who's gonna set provision for the investment in state enterprise bond? Who's gonna set in provision for the PTT? So if you look through the balance sheet of the companies that invest in the debt securities, there's no provision. Most of them, there's no provision except for investment in like, okay. So there's most of the things we will not see the provision, but under new accounting standard, 100% more provision on the investment in debt securities. Even they invest in government bond or state enterprise bond, they need a provision, though it might not significantly, but they need to set up. This question again, financial institution ask the Bank of Thailand whether what will impact if they don't set up the provision. Bank of Thailand said they disagree. They need to quantify and set up whatsoever method. All right. Investment in equity. These equity instruments should not, is not cover investment in subsidiary, joint venture or associate. It's just invest in equity securities which is like listed in stock exchange, investment in unit holding companies or like non-listed companies. So this one, it might increase or decrease to the net impact. It depends on what classification, as I mentioned to you previously. More fair value to P&L, because they would like realized gain to go to profit and loss. So if the investment in equity still be the significant portion on the balance sheet, I can guarantee you that more volatile to the profit and loss. Loans to parent company or loans to subsidiary companies. You might think that, okay, there is no impact. Actually, no. two things that you need to consider. One is about the related transactions. All right. If you look through the financial statement of the listed companies, they might issue the loan to subsidiary with very low interest rate, which is not correct under FS 9. The concept is that even the related parties, you need to lend it with the fair interest rate. So difference between the rate that they offer to the subsidiary and the market rate needs to be capitalized. So the increase, they might have that impact in terms of increase or decrease in terms of the balance if they don't issue the loans at the fair rate. Again, provision needs to be set up. There is no excuse that subsidiaries is very my own, blah, 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 blah. No, I gap. It can be acceptable, but under FS, you need to think and prove why you think that the provision is not required. All right. Trade receivable. The way we set up the provision needs to be changed. Not just use the gut feeling to set up the provision anymore. You need the data in the past to calculate the experience of default, and you also need to think about the future. What's gonna impact of the ability to pay of the portfolio. And one topic which always be ignored or always be forgotten by the companies is about the cash management policy. Have you ever seen that sometimes the companies can dispose the receivables to the financial institution? For example, if I short of cash, I'm the company, I short of cash, and I just sell the products to, for example, like PTT, which is very big name. I have two choices. One, I borrow the money from the financial institution, or I just find something on my balance sheet to sell it out, right? I might choose the second option, which is selling this trade receivable to the financial institutions. When you sell the receivable to the financial institution, normally there are two choices to route. One is with recourse. The second one is without recourse. With recourse meaning that if the PTT default, financial institution can collect the cash from me. This is with recourse. If it is without recourse, meaning that if I dispose receivable to the financial institution and PTT later on default, bank cannot claim it from me. All right. I think if you look through the financial impact or in terms of the financial analysis, you will see that what's the difference? I don't care as long as I get a cash. All right. These two decisions has the impact to the financial statements of the company. First choice, if you have the receivable and you sell it out to the bank and you say, PTT, just in case that PTT default, you claim from me, you claim the default back to the companies. This one, receivable still sit on the balance sheet, but cash will book against the liabilities. So the DE ratio gonna increase, right? With recourse, sell the receivable with recourse. If we sell the receivable with recourse, meaning that if PTT default, you claim it from the company. This one is with recourse. So cash will be collected from financial institution, but it would be booked against the liabilities. So DE, debt equity ratio gonna increase because your debt increase by doing sales with recourse. So most of the company try to push to sell it without recourse so that they can reduce the trade receivable immediately. Cash will be booked, debit cash increase, reduce the trade receivable. Good, right? No impact to the DE. Difference between trade receivable that you book on balance sheet and the cash you receive is the interest expense. This transaction gonna be impacted by classification of this trade receivable. Because based on current Thai accounting standard, we book it as cost. For example, we sell the product to the customer 100 baht, right? We book receivable 100 against sales. And at the end of the period, we just set up the provision is required. But if the company use the cash management strategy to dispose the trade receivable out when we have the cash liquidity problem, under Thai accounting standard, under IFRS, this trade receivable needs to book at fair value through OCI. At the end of the accounting period, fair value need to be calculated for trade receivable. Because you dispose trade receivable to the financial institution, it cannot be classified or booked at cost anymore. All right, so I think this one, if you are the treasury, if you are the one who manage the cash for the companies, and you would like to borrow or find the cash flow or working cap for the company, you need to consider how you're gonna manage the trade receivable. Sale with recourse, increase the debt. Sale without recourse is gonna impact how you measure the trade receivable. The liability side, I think most of the impact would be structure notes or the cost that we are talking about, that there is no accrual or straight line concept under IFRS anymore. We're using about the effective interest rate. This one is the financial position of the financial institution. The first line item that is gonna have on the balance sheet of the bank is the derivatives asset, more volatile. As I previously told you, under Thai GAAP, we have two kinds of derivatives for the financial institution. First group is the trading derivatives. The trading derivatives is for like making profit on profit. So what they book or what they present on the balance sheet so far, they measure it at fair value. But for derivatives that they do hedge, under economic hedge, right now they do the accrual. They accrue the swap, calculate the difference between interest, float, and fixed, and do the accrue, no mark to the market. Forward, no booking on the balance sheet. If they apply IFRS 9, everything needs to be fair value. If they don't want to fair value, they need to do the hedge accounting. Hedge accounting requires certain activities like being able to match the derivatives, which is the hedging instruments, against the hedge item. You do think about how long that we do the accrue for the derivatives. We have been done for a century already, but now you would like the bank to match the hedge item against hedging instruments. They cannot do. Because derivatives have been done long time ago. And we have lots of long-term derivatives like IRS, CCIRS, of which they might done like 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, even 10 years ago. They cannot match with hedge item because there is no system to match, and there is no requirement under Thai GAAP or under BOT to match the hedge item against the hedging instruments. So immediately after IFRS 9 after IFRS 9 being implemented, I can guarantee that more volatile from derivatives. Investment in debt, as I previously told you, major impact for the financial institution would be the provision for government bond, for state enterprise bond. It might not have like huge provision being set up, but there is expense being occurred for sure. Investment in equities, instruments. Normally the financial institution are few financial institutions invest in equities. But if you look through the local banks, they always have the securities companies as the subsidiaries. The securities companies gonna invest a lot in the investment in equity securities. So in the company only financial statements, you will not see the impact on the classification of the investment in equities, but it's gonna happen on the consolidated financial statements because the subsidiaries, some, for example, like securities companies or like the fund, they might have investment in equities instruments. Loans to customer, very, very big impact from this line. Allowance for doubtful accounts. For certain local banks, they hire like consultants to help them quantify just only this line, and the cost, I tell you, is very huge, very, very, very expensive, more than you think about. Because first thing, it's very new. Second thing, they don't want the allowance to be volatile. So they need a formula that is reasonable, that can forecast the future, can be accepted by the market, by the regulators, by the auditors, and at the same time, don't create the volatilities to the profit and loss. Because in reality, if you think about like the character of people, especially for Thai people, we're gonna have like the loan, the character of, for example, like the retail. When the school's gonna start around April, around May, people always default. When there's a new year, December, January, most of the people got the bonus. They won't default. All right. If we just set up the provision by using the PD or by using the aging, for sure, provision during June would increase significantly because that's the period of people needs to pay the tuition fee for the children. You don't laugh, it's true. I just have the meeting with the CRO last week. They are very worried. It's the normal life of the people. April, May, high default. December, January, no default at all. Very enjoy and significant increase in loan. Significant increase in the credit card usage because we buy lots of New Year gift. No default at all. So the thing is that how the bank is gonna manage the allowance to be, very stable throughout the year. This is very challenging because how we set up the staging of the loan, one criteria is about the default. For the liability side, I think most of the impact would be from the debt issues, the borrowing, and also the structure notes. Because this one we need to calculate effective interest rate. For the liability side, actually, there's no difference between IAS 39, which applied overseas, and IFRS 9. But this one is very new to Thai companies. The classification under Thai accounting standard, actually there are 4 types. If we compare against the IFRS, how we measure of the Thai accounting standard or even the IFRS 9 is quite similar. We have only 3 choices under Thai GAAP and under IFRS, which is amortized cost or either fair value. All right, but changing from current Thai accounting standards to IFRS 9, there are more activities that the companies need to do. They need to think about the business model. They need to think about what are the features of the products or of the loans or of the investment. That's kind of thing gonna drive to the measurement, subsequent measurement, whether it's gonna be amortized cost or fair value. Other comprehensive income is part under net income. Fair value to P&L is the mark to the market, to the profit and loss, meaning that if you go through this route, fair value and change in fair value to other comprehensive income, there's no impact on the earnings per share. But if you select the route to fair value to profit and loss, earnings per share is going to be impacted. I just try to summarize the difference between Thai current standard and IFRS. There are 4 areas that gonna be changed a lot from IAS 39 to IFRS 9. Classification and measurement. All right. We need to think about more. I will tell you what is the business model, what is the solely payment and principal. We have choice to do the fair value. Interest rate, interest income. Right now, this is one of the ridiculous thing under Thai accounting standard as well. Has any of you borrow money to for your house? Have you borrowed any money from the financial institution? ไม่มี รวย you all are rich. You don't even borrow the money from the financial institution, or you are too young to buy a house. คะอะไรนะ affordable buy by cash. Wow. Normally, if you borrow the bank and you ask for example, the housing loan, the package that the bank is going to offer to you is 2 years or 3 years with fixed interest, with the fixed deposit rate loan, and after 3 years it's gonna be the MLR, minimum lending rate. All right, that's very common for the bank to borrow you the money. So under current accounting standard, what they have been booking is that first year you lend it with the fixed, so interest rate is booked at the fixed rate. Second year, book it at the fixed deposit rate. Third year, fixed deposit rate. Fourth year, you just book it at the MLR rate. So it will be booked in accordance with the loan contract. Under new accounting standard, no more contractual. If you compare the wording, it's different. We call it as effective interest rate, which is IRR. So if you do the book interest rate under Thai accounting standard, it will be the ladder step by step. But under new standard, it's going to be the curve, because you book it as the IRR. The first few years, you receive the cash at the fixed rate, but under how you gonna book under effective interest rate, you might book the interest that you're gonna receive in the future as part of the income in the first 2 or 3 years. All right? Meaning what? Who cares? What's gonna be different? Book as a contract or book as the effective interest rate. If you are a new bank, you just offer or increase a significant part in terms of the housing loan, for example. Cash you receive is very small, right? But the interest income will be boom, a lot. Because you recognize the interest or the cash that you're gonna receive in the future, in the current year. You think about the IRR. Think about some concept finance. You think about the IRR. The IRR, you have to plot the cash flow, right? That you're gonna receive, and you discount it by X rate, which is we call IRR, ใช่ไหม Okay. So this IRR will use for recording the interest. In the first 3 years, the real cash that you receive from the customer is very low because you receive at a fixed rate. This is the marketing gimmick. But in reality, you might think that, okay, this first 3 years, I expect to reduce cash very slow. But in the future, you need to pay a lot, right, to cover these 3 years. That's the kind of finance concept, right? It's applied to the accounting standard as well. The future cash flow would be recognized as interest income in the first 3 years. All right? So if you keep increasing the portfolio of the housing loan, net income will increase, but with very small cash inflow. All right, so you can boost up the interest income.
What about the refinancing every 3 years?
Very good question. Did you borrow any from the bank? It's very common in Thailand because most of the housing loan would be, if you look through the contract, it would be 20 years, 30 years. But in reality, it's different. The actual life of the loan is a lot shorter than the contractual life because most of the people will do the refinance. Because if every bank keeps offer fixed deposit rate in the first 3 years and later on MLR, people will shift after these 3 years, right? The bank are gonna ask you for prepayment fee. Because you terminate the contract before the contractual life, so they will ask for the prepayment fee. So you need to benchmark, you need to calculate the benefit of changing the financial institution against the prepayment fee that you need to pay to the bank. So if we look to understand more in terms of the life of the housing loan, contractual would be like 20 years, 30 years. But in reality, expected life, when the bank calculate the expected life of the housing loan, it would be around 8 to 10 years, shorter than the contractual life. If you look through like Singapore, Malaysia, gonna be like a lot shorter than Thailand. I don't know because they are rich, or they wanna do the refinance in Thailand. But it's very short. Oh, I need to go back to the cash flow again. Under Thai GAAP, we book by using the cash based on the contract. Under IFRS, we record based on effective interest rate. The Bank of Thailand is really worried about the cash flow or recognizing the interest income. They don't comfortable for the bank to pay the dividend from the interest income, because they feel like there is no cash being received. How can the financial institution pay the dividend out of the interest income that haven't been received as cash? So they try to force the bank to pay the dividend out of the contractual interest income only. For the part which is the effective interest rate adjustment, they might disallow the bank to pay the dividend from that part of the income. So the bank should be able to classify interest income into two types: interest income based on the contractual and the AR adjustment or the AR adjustment. Because at that part, the bank cannot pay the dividend, but they need to pay the tax. Impairment. Under IFRS, current IFRS, we think about impairment as an incurred loss, meaning that you need to have the objective evidence. You need to have the sign of default in order to set up the provision. Under IFRS 9, you grant the loan on day one. Provision need to be set up. No matter any evidence of default, day one loan, day one provision. So meaning that more provision to the financial institution. They have to invest in terms of the software because they need to do the staging. They need to be able to track every single loan of the bank. Every single loan, every single time throughout the life of the loan, they need to know the credit risk. They need to be able to map the credit risk as of the date that they calculate the provision against credit risk on day one. That's a significant or huge investment to the bank because most of the bank, you think how much accounts that they have, how much customers that the bank, like the BBL have.คิดว่ามีลูกค้ากี่คนคะใช่ more than 5 million and they need to know every status or every single position of each individual customers so that they can quantify the provision and can be able to disclose in the notes to financial statements. very challenging. The last one, hedge accounting, IFRS, there is new concept to the bank and to the companies as well. Can I skip this one? So I just would like to explain in terms of the concept, and so you will understand why I explain that how we measure the financial asset on the balance sheet would be different, right? So let me explain by starting on the easiest part of the balance sheet. Derivatives, forward, interest rate swap, option, cross currency swap, everything FVTPL. This one is abbreviated from fair value through profit and loss. FVTPL is from fair value through profit and loss. Every single quarter, every single year, we need to quantify the fair value of the derivatives. On day one, how much is the fair value of forward or interest rate swap? MIF. Day one, what is the fair value of derivatives? 0, right? ใช่ไหม 0 นะ except premium option นะ 0 Next study next semester. Okay, that's my fault. So derivatives on day one fair value is 0 except for the option. It depends on like buy or sell whatsoever. So most of derivative fair value on day one is 0. When you measure at the end of accounting period, for example, like 31st of March, right? And this forward gonna have the value, whether it's gonna be gain or loss, you need to book it through P&L. And normally, if you have like interest rate swap or cross currency swap, it's gonna be very long term because most of the companies try to have the swap to hedge against the liabilities that they have. For example, they might borrow floating rate, US dollar, LIBOR. And they're gonna hedge, so they're gonna buy the CCS to hedge and changing from US dollar LIBOR to Thai baht fixed rate loan. So this one gonna be very long term, depends on the life of the liabilities. All right, so change in fair value would hit to the P&L in every quarter. So more volatile from derivatives. Equity instruments. The first question that they have invest in the equity instruments, the financial investor, like the trader, needs to decide whether its intention is for trading or for like short-term investment or not. If yes, again, FVT P&L. If fair value to P&L, more volatile to P&L. If not, next question, whether this investment in equities would like to classify it as fair value to OCI or not. OCI is the like the bottom of the net income. It will go directly to retained earning, no P&L impact, no earning per share impact. It's called fair value to OCI. This one is an option. If they don't want to apply the option, it's going to be trading portfolio, P&L volatile. If they would like to apply the fair value option, as I told you previously, very happy, no volatile during the day that they don't sell it out. Unrealized gain loss of the equity will go directly to fair value to OCI. But you need to mark that when they sell it out or dispose investment equity out of fair value to OCI. There is no realized to profit and loss. This one is very significant impact. No realized to profit and loss. Again, for the loan, for the equity classified as fair value to OCI, no impairment needs to consider. So you don't have, if you are like the current financial department of the companies, you might be asked by the accounting to quantify the fair value, and they might ask you about whether we need to set any impact to the equity instruments. But under new accounting standard, no more impairment for the investment in equities. So these two are very easy. the most difficulty is about the debt. Because this one is very new. Debt instruments that we are talking about or that needs to look through this fold would be investment in bonds, loan to customer for financial institutions, or even account receivables from the companies. For the most of the companies, loan to customers, loan to subsidiary, for example. We need to think about the business model. Actually, it's kind of the same as the intention or how we measure the performance of the portfolio that we are talking about. For example, if we are talking about like the account receivable, the most easiest part of the financial statement, the account receivable. So they would ask, what is the business of account receivable? Are we going to like, having the account receivable and when it's meet the credit terms, we are going just only collect the cash from the customer or not? If yes, we will do the next question. If not, like I previously told you, receivable sold to financial institution without recourse, this answer would be no. So you need to ask the question next, which is like, what is the business model, whether you would like to hold it and collect it. And at the same time, you might sell it out. All right, so, if you sell it without recourse, it's gonna be yes. Next question would be the SPPI testing, or looking in details in terms of the structure, in terms of like the feature of the financial asset. Most of like the account receivable, this one would be very easy. You invest or you just sell the products to the customer, and when it's due, you just collect the cash. So we're gonna pass it and say yes. Next question is whether you would like to fair value it or not. This one is the choice. Whether you would like to measure the receivable as the fair value or not, mostly will say no, because it will be very difficult and like burden to the people who calculate the fair value, so we will say no. So most of the receivable, if you don't sell it without recourse, it's gonna be amortized cost, which is debit, or which is like booking the receivable on the first date, and keep it as it is until you collect the cash out of the customer. Is called like amortized cost. But if you sell it without recourse, you need to fair value of your receivable, and change in fair value will go to OCI, the line after net income. You might think that okay, it's very easy, which is not true. Because you might think, okay, fair value, I can help the accounting to qualify or to quantify the fair value. But what is the discount rate that you're gonna use? How you fair value? How you quantify the fair value? How you fair value the investment in bond? Don't tell me, look into the Thai BMA. How you fair value? How you calculate the fair value? Discount cash flow. Right? You plot the expected cash flow that you're gonna receive and discount by using the fair market rate. What is the fair market rate? Fair market rate should represent what? Credit risk, time value of money. Yeah. How many receivables that you have on the portfolio? How can you quantify the credit risk of that portfolio? If you have like 1,000 receivable on hand, how can you quantify first thing time value of money, because it's gonna be due different timeline? How can you assess the credit risk of the receivables? So it's not easy at all. It's the burdensome in terms of like nitty-gritty works, even though the amount might not be different significantly, because it's most of them would be like the short-term receivable. But you need to do something, which is cost of the company. All right, so this one is very easy. Let me use another example. Do you know the credit link notes? รู้จัก credit link note ไหม? Do you know the credit link note? credit link note for example again อาจารย์ธัญรักษ์ issue the note and I invest in คุณธัญรักษ์ notes but the payments of the interest would be linked to Bank of Thailand for example note being invested by me the issuer is คุณธัญรักษ์ but interest payment would be increase decrease depends on the credit risk of the Bank of Thailand or government นะลืม Bank of Thailand credit link notes is like the payment of interest linked to other counterparties actually it would be very strange right because if คุณธัญรักษ์ issue the notes the interest payment should relevant between should be represent her credit risk her time value of money not relevant to the Bank of Thailand or the government bond right so let's say that I invest in the credit link note all right so the first question that I'm gonna ask is whether when I invest in this credit link note what is the purpose of this investment whether I'm happy to invest and collect the interest being paid by คุณธัญรักษ์ and I'm happy to just only receive the cash from principal being paid by คุณธัญรักษ์ if I said yes so I'm gonna ask the next question it will say okay I'm not quite sure I might think that if the market is good enough or the government might the government might increase in terms of the credit risk I might be gain if I sell it out because I buy it when the credit risk of the government is very low for example so I might sell it out but not sure whether gonna collect or gonna sell it out so this question would be yes by the second box alright so next question that I need to ask is about the SPPI testing solely payment principal and interest or not is it solely principal and payment for like the normal kind of the loan as I told you previously normal loan would be should represent by credit risk of อาจารย์ธัญรักษ์ should represent by the time value of อาจารย์ธัญรักษ์ it should not be relevant to other parties so this question would be no what happened is that these structure notes would present as fair value to P&L kind of like this credit note is like gambling kind of gambling because the return would not relevant by คุณธัญรักษ์ is gonna relevant to other credit risks other like the government bond or the Bank of Thailand that they refer to so this one is no measure the subsequent measurement of this investment in every accounting period we need to quantify the fair value of this credit link note and difference in fair value would be recorded as the fair value to P&L. Very difficult I tell you. Because the standard just give you very high level guideline. You need to use the judgment. You need to understand the features and need to understand the concept or the logic of having that structure notes. Whether issuers would like to play some things with simplified notes or not. The product that normally fail this SPPI testing, which I saw in Thailand, would be credit link note, credit default swap note, strangle, or sometimes the product that embedded with option like strangle, straddles, or digital options notes, kind of notes which have very extra or special name normally would fail SPPI test. You may say that okay, so what is the impact? As I told you previously, most of the company that invest in the structured notes would be insurance company and the financial institutions sometimes. When they invest in the structured notes and they need to measure the notes at fair value to P&L, the P&L would be volatile. Because they're gonna have to fair value the structured notes which have many combination of the risks, credit risks, interest rate risks, and also embedded derivatives that is part of the notes. So I think in the future, if I can guess, the structured notes would not be popular as previous years, because no one would like to have the P&L which is very volatile. So if they reduce like the volatility by not investing in the structured notes, so interest earned from plain vanilla product normally is less than the structured notes. So in terms of like the investment companies or the insurance companies that invest in the, this kind of structured note, net income might reduce. Because liability is fixed, right? But the variety in terms of investment is reduced. It's more difficult for people to manage the risk. This one just like basis. I just explain more in terms of how you justify, business model, how to collect and sell, and also like as a fair value to P&L, you can entertain reading it later on. This one is just like how we justify the principal and interest. The explanation is to cover this slide. You can read it later on after the class. This is the example of the product that normally fail the SPPI testing that you can see in the market, like inverse floater or the investment which is linked to equity index. You need to know, for example, the convertible bond, right? Convertible bond. ไม่ได้เรียนอีกเหรอ Still bank. Convertible bond is kind of the bond which is has an option for the companies to like get the principal interest out of the bonds, or instead of receiving the cash from principal interest, you might select the option to receive the equities. This kind of thing is kind of equity linked notes. Or some might feature some of the price would impact the return of the investment in bonds. Kind of thing. It's not relevant to the bond at all, because nature of the bond, you just receive the interest and cash from the loan or from the bond, not relevant to other risks like the equity risk, the commodity risk. So this gonna like fail the SPPI testing. So I think we have like 15 minutes break, and I will walk through the financial liability.